Good morning. I'm Linda, and this is No Frills ASMR. Some of you are saying, Linda, aren't you supposed to be on vacation? Yes, I am. But I've had a little flurry of comments just in the past 2 days that are discussing white privilege. White privilege. And after reading and responding multiple times, I thought, maybe I should just make a quick video. Just for anyone who's like, I don't even know what you guys are talking about. So before you get in the comments and type out your smart remark, let me just say this. White privilege does not mean that white people have not struggled. There is no claim that white people have necessarily had an easy life or that they didn't suffer from abuse or poverty, family addiction, trauma, any forms of discrimination. White people can definitely be discriminated against for all sorts of reasons. It is simply saying that there's an added layer of pressure based on skin color. Does that make sense? So really, I could end the video right here and make it short. I mean, that's really the gist of it. I gotta be quiet because I gotta think about how to spell this word. So, what it doesn't equal is an easy life for someone, that they weren't abused or dealt with poverty or had trouble finding a job or had any sorts of traumas in their life. It's not saying anything like that. So you don't have to tell me how hard your life is. I understand a lot of people have very difficult lives. And you also may have been discriminated against for all sorts of reasons. Or had a poor education. You could have gone to a failing school. So white privilege isn't saying white folks didn't have these things. All it is saying is that you had no added discrimination or obstacle. No added obstacles. Let's say that. How do you spell that word? I'm sorry, I'm not a good speller. Based on skin tone, skin color, accent. Really skin color, I guess, would be our... All right. This is it. Okay? So, in the comments, somebody said all these, I don't know how he phrased it, but basically people saying that there's white privilege when white people were the ones who built the great nations of the world. And I did respond to that person directly, but I'll respond here too. Yes, but all the great nations, if you're talking about places like Rome, the Greek, the Ottoman Empire, those were built on slaves. Now, at that time, the slave labor was often prisoners of war or even prisoners from places they went and conquered, like Europe. So they were often people from other nations a lot of times, but people we would consider white people, Caucasian. But then once you get into the United States and Great Britain, then it goes into slavery that's based on skin color. So those nations, sorry, UK, you've been dragged into this. Only not as long as US though, by over 100 years, I think. They're going to Africa and they're taking people from there. They're bringing them to the Caribbean islands. They're bringing them to the United States. They're bringing them up to Europe as slaves. And that is really when slavery became about skin color. And that system of slavery that they used in the United States was called, I think you spell like that, chattel slavery, which is slavery where the people are seen as property and it's a permanent situation for these people and it's passed on to children. So when you think the United States was built by white people, you must remember that it could not have been built without slavery. And I have been watching the documentary about the Revolutionary War, and it is really very interesting how much slaves played a part in that war, both by running to Great Britain, who promised them freedom, and some fought for the U.S. as for their owners at the time who didn't want to fight. They'd send their slaves in their place or along with them. It's very interesting. But I think I've said enough on that. Now, I have, in my personal journey through this conversation with people I know, heard about the Irish indentured servants. That was bad too. A lot of them were definitely exploited and treated brutally. I read books about, I forget what the book was, but there's a really good book about a young Irish woman who was an indentured servant. But they did have contracts with end dates. They weren't property. Sometimes they were quote unquote volunteers. I mean, they were sort of desperate. There was no other option. But they knew they did get into the indentured situation. And by working, you pay off your indenturedness. Now, it wasn't always a fair system. Like I said, they were abused and whatever. But they were also legally recognized as human beings, which slaves were not. So that's just my response to the guy who's saying that everybody should be thanking white people for the great nations of the world. And I'm not saying that white people didn't do some amazing things. I'm not. I'm just saying that we shouldn't forget, who did the labor a lot of times for these things. So if you say to me, well, these things are more trouble nowadays than the skin color thing. Like, slavery was a long time ago, and we have to get over it. Okay. They have done studies in recent times, like modern times, that show that when you have a stack of resumes, names that sound black get fewer callbacks. And during interviews, people who are of color, oftentimes, with even equal or better resumes, get fewer callbacks. Um, they're more often to be, black people are more often to be followed in stores by security. I mean, they've done studies on these things. And I just got to say, from a personal perspective, my friend up the street has white children. She's white, but she also has a black son. And she was telling me how she's really had nervousness and had to teach him some things beyond what her other kids are taught, like how to deal with. I have to be a little careful saying this. I'm trying to think the wording, but basically a police encounter. You know, how best to handle that. You know, just knowing you have to do that as a mother is, just think about that. Think about if you personally, and I know some people can't think outside their own self, but try to imagine you are a black person, mother with a black son, and you need to tell them, like, look, if you get pulled over by police, you know, well, here's what you need to do, and to not end up dead, basically. And then also, some people who have studied hard and worked hard and made it far in the world are told that they are a diversity hire. And so, you know, there's that. There's that. Speaking of diversity hires, there is a thing that has become news right now, which is okay, I do that sometimes. I may have a little issue. All right, which is DEI. And just so you know, just so you're aware, what that stands for is diversity, equality, and inclusion. And this is a program. Okay, I'll tell you what it is not. This is not a program that gives people jobs. It is a program that focuses on reviewing systems, and it helps to train people about biases, because a lot of times a bias is something you don't even know you have. It's not that you're an outright racist, but you don't even know that you have certain bias. So it's helped with training for that. And then I forgot what I was going to say. But anyway, it doesn't give people jobs. So it doesn't mean that unqualified hiring goes on or that any kind of blaming of white people. It's about diversity, equality, and inclusion. And this can be not just with people of color, but with people with disabilities, and other things. Now, the current administration is opposing DEI because it believes it prioritizes identity over merit and creates like a reverse discrimination that is promoting systematic racism. But in what I've looked at from it, and you guys can feel free to go and do some research on this, that's just not accurate. That's not accurate at all. So I don't know. I'll just put that out there. This comes up in the comments fairly often where people are like, blah, 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 DEI hire, whatever. Okay. Well, you don't get hired for DEI. That's really what I want to make clear. This is not a gets you hired situation. So I know that some people like to say like, we should all be colorblind, but that's not a reality. And ignoring inequalities in the world doesn't make them go away. Like it's better to look at the world and say, yeah, we do have some biases, or yeah, we do have, if you can look at yourself no, whatever. I don't think some people have that ability. I don't know. So anyway, that's kind of what I have to say about white privilege. I'm only saying making this video really because I feel like I keep repeating myself in the comments, and I will continue to repeat myself because I think it's important to understand, what it is. So I'm willing to do that, but I just thought I'd make a video, and that way, if there are, who knows, are there open-minded people left in the world? I don't know. We'll see. But what it isn't is telling any white people that your life's easy. No, it's not. It's not. There are plenty of white people who've been through crap and garbage and stuff all their life. I know. I get it. It's just simply saying there isn't an added obstacle around skin color. And I know a lot of people say, yeah, but we need to be colorblind. But the reality is there's still a lot of racist people in the world. And people who aren't even out and out racist but have bias, whether they know it or not. That still exists. And to pretend like it doesn't, that's silly. That's just silly. So that's all that is. So I know this has become what do you call that? A flashpoint, one of those words that people like think means something more than it does. I don't know what, I can't think what you call that kind of phrase. It's like, it's a trigger for people. It's a real trigger, and I'm not exactly sure why. I don't know what the trigger is about. But anyway, so yeah. So if anybody ever, if you ever use this and people go blah, 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 you can just say, look, it's not saying that white people had it easy. It's just saying you don't have the added obstacle in your life. And I'm not saying being black is an obstacle either, like, to be clear. There are plenty of people of all different colors who are proud and, but in certain environments, it can be an obstacle. Okay. Does that all make sense? All right. We'll see how this goes. All right, guys. Well, I don't know if I got that across right or not, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and that the sun shines on your face and you feel joy.